In this lecture, we're going to step back from day-to-day purchasing activities and focus on something more foundational: purchasing policies and procedures. These are not the most exciting topics at first glance, but they are absolutely central to how purchasing operates responsibly, ethically, and strategically inside organizations. As supply chains have become more global, more digital, and more exposed to risk, purchasing policies have moved from being administrative documents to strategic governance mechanisms. What we'll see today is how policies shape authority, behavior, supplier relationships, and even corporate reputation. This unit focuses on two related but distinct concepts: policies and procedures. Policies define what should guide decisions. Procedures define how tasks are carried out. In purchasing, both matter, but confusing the two leads to poor decision-making, compliance issues, and unnecessary rigidity. Over the next hour, we'll carefully separate these ideas and show how they work together. By the end of this lecture, you should be able to do three things. First, you should understand why purchasing policies are important, not just from a control standpoint, but from an ethical, strategic, and organizational perspective. Second, you should understand the different types of purchasing policies, including those related to authority, conduct, social responsibility, and supplier relationships. Third, you should understand purchasing procedures and how they operationalize policy without replacing managerial judgment. Let's begin with the concept of a policy. A policy is a set of purposes, principles, and rules of action that guide organizational behavior. Policies do not tell employees exactly what to do in every situation. Instead, they establish boundaries, priorities, and expectations. In purchasing, policies often take the form of standard operating principles, rules, and regulations. Some are formally written, such as ethics codes or authority limits, while others are informal and embedded in organizational culture. Importantly, policies reflect values. They signal what an organization cares about and how it expects its people to act when faced with trade-offs or ambiguity. Purchasing policies provide several advantages. They help define top management and objectives and serve as a communication mechanism across the organization. Policies promote consistency, ensuring that similar situations are handled in similar ways. They also clarify rules and responsibilities, reducing confusion. However, policies are not perfect. In large organizations, they can be difficult to communicate and enforce consistently. Employees may view policies as substitutes for good management rather than guidance. Policies also cannot anticipate every situation. When written too rigidly, they can restrict flexibility and discourage innovation. This is why effective purchasing leadership requires both policies and judgment. So what makes an effective policy? Effective policies are action-oriented. They help people make decisions rather than simply stating ideals. They must be relevant, concise, and unambiguous so employees clearly understand what is expected. Policies also need to be timely and current. A policy written 10 years ago may no longer align with today's supply chain realities. Finally, policies must be reviewed periodically. If a policy creates more problems than it solves, it should be revised or eliminated. Policies should enable performance, not hinder it. Purchasing policies typically fall into several categories. Some policies define the role of purchasing within the organization. Others define the conduct of purchasing personnel, ensuring ethical behavior. Additional categories include policies governing buyer-supplier relationships, social and minority business objectives, and operational issues. Together, these categories ensure purchasing decisions are aligned with corporate strategy, legal requirements, and stakeholder expectations. One of the most important purchasing policies concerns authority. Purchasing authority is the formal right to conduct business and represent the organization. This authority is typically granted by senior leadership or an executive committee. Policies specify who can make purchasing decisions, under what conditions, and within what dollar limits. They also define how authority can be delegated to other functional areas. As purchasing becomes more involved in both direct and indirect spend, clearly defining authority reduces risk, prevents maverick spending, and protects organizational interests. The purchasing function plays a strategic role in helping organizations operate efficiently, ethically, and competitively. Its objectives go far beyond simply buying goods at the lowest price. First, purchasing is responsible for selecting suppliers that meet purchase and performance requirements. This means identifying suppliers who can reliably deliver the right quality, quantity, cost, and service, both today and over the long term. Second, purchasing ensures that materials and services comply with engineering and quality standards. Buyers must work closely with technical teams to make sure what is purchased meets design specifications, safety requirements, and regulatory expectations. Another key objective is to promote strong buyer-supplier relationships and encourage supplier contribution. Effective purchasing is collaborative, engaging suppliers as partners who can contribute ideas, innovation, and continuous improvement. Purchasing must also treat all suppliers fairly and ethically. This includes transparent bidding processes, avoiding conflicts of interest, and maintaining professional integrity in all supplier interactions. Because purchasing decisions affect the entire organization, buyers must work closely with other departments, including operations, engineering, finance, marketing, and sustainability teams, to ensure alignment and coordination. Beyond the firm itself, purchasing should conduct operations in ways that enhance community and employee relations, supporting responsible sourcing, local suppliers when appropriate, and socially responsible practices. Purchasing also plays a role in supporting overall corporate objectives and policies, whether those priorities involve cost leadership, innovation, sustainability, risk management, or ethical governance. Finally, an effective purchasing function depends on people. Organizations must maintain a qualified purchasing staff and continuously develop their professional capabilities, ensuring buyers have strong analytical skills, negotiation expertise, ethical judgment, and strategic insight. Together, these objectives position purchasing not as a transactional activity, but as a strategic function that contributes directly to organizational success. At the corporate level, purchasing plays a coordinating and governance role that ensures consistency, alignment, and strategic impact across the organization. One primary objective of corporate purchasing is to carry out executive policies. This means translating top management's strategic priorities such as cost control, risk management, sustainability, or ethical sourcing into purchasing practices that can be applied across business units. Corporate purchasing also works to develop and publish category-level purchasing policies and procedures. These guidelines support efficiency at multiple levels by standardizing processes for key spend categories, while still allowing flexibility for local or operational needs. Another important role is to coordinate strategy development. Corporate purchasing helps align sourcing strategies across divisions, ensuring that supplier decisions, contract structures, and risk approaches support the firm's overall competitive strategy. To ensure continuous improvement, corporate purchasing must evaluate the effectiveness of purchasing operations through key performance indicators, or KPIs. These metrics may include cost savings, supplier performance, compliance, cycle time, and risk exposure, providing leadership with visibility into purchasing outcomes. Corporate purchasing also serves as a center of expertise by providing expert support to purchasing departments. This includes guidance on negotiations, contracts, analytics, supplier management, and emerging best practices. Finally, corporate purchasing performs other coordination tasks necessary to align purchasing roles across the organization. These activities help ensure consistency, knowledge sharing, and effective collaboration among decentralized purchasing teams. Together, these objectives position corporate purchasing as a strategic integrator, connecting executive intent with operational purchasing decisions across the enterprise. A significant portion of purchasing policy focuses on behavior. Ethics policies establish expectations regarding conflicts of interest, fairness, and integrity. Reciprocity policies explicitly prohibit favoritism based on mutual purchasing relationships. Policies also limit unauthorized supplier contacts to protect purchasing authority and prevent misinterpretation. Former employees pose risks due to insider knowledge, which is why many organizations impose cooling-off periods. Finally, reporting mechanisms for irregular business dealings, such as bribes, cronyism, or late bids, are essential for maintaining trust and accountability. A significant portion of purchasing policy focuses on behavior. Ethics policies establish expectations regarding conflicts of interest, fairness, and integrity. Reciprocity policies explicitly prohibit favoritism based on mutual purchasing relationships. Organizations are encouraged to not give preference to suppliers that buy from you. or suppliers to purchase your products as a condition for securing a purchasing contract. Purchasing must control unauthorized or excessive contacts and visits with suppliers, which will help maintain credibility of purchasing's authority and minimize situations where a supplier interprets statements and opinions offered by non-purchasing personnel. Modern purchasing policies increasingly reflect broader social responsibilities. Many organizations actively support minority and disadvantaged suppliers, recognizing challenges such as limited access to capital and smaller scale. There is, in general, strong state support for commitment to diversity. Organizations are encouraged to evaluate performance of small and disadvantaged suppliers and invite to bid on new contracts. Corporate social responsibility policies now address sustainability, low-cost country sourcing, labor conditions, and ethical treatment of people. These issues are dynamic, evolving with public expectations, regulatory pressures, and investor scrutiny. Purchasing plays a frontline role in enforcing these commitments, including ensuring labor and human rights violations are dealt with immediately and effectively, as well as ensuring the ethical treatments of employees and other stakeholders in areas such as providing living wages, ensuring safety and security, and paying adequate overtime, but also tracking this as well. These issues should be implemented across the supply chain and not just within the bounds of an organization. Finally, we turn to purchasing procedures. Procedures are detailed operating instructions, the how-to of purchasing. They are documented in procedure manuals, supported by standardized forms, and often embedded in electronic purchasing systems. Procedures must be reviewed regularly, simplified where possible, and designed to support performance rather than slow it down. Good procedures translate policy into action without eliminating professional judgment. Procedural manuals play an important supporting role in purchasing and operational effectiveness by documenting how work should be done. First, a procedural manual acts as a reference guide. It provides employees with a reliable source they can consult to understand processes, responsibilities, and required actions. These manuals are especially valuable for training new employees. By clearly outlining procedures, they help new hires learn expectations more quickly and reduce reliance on informal, word-of-mouth instruction. Procedural manuals also promote consistency and order by documenting the required steps and activities needed to perform tasks. This helps ensure that work is carried out the same way across individuals, teams, and locations. By standardizing processes, manuals support efficient operations. Employees spend less time guessing how tasks should be done and more time executing them correctly. In some cases, procedural manuals may specify industry best practices, helping organizations align their processes with professional standards, regulatory requirements, or recognized benchmarks. However, procedural manuals are not static documents. They must be reviewed periodically to ensure they remain timely, accurate, and aligned with current practices and technologies. They should also be simplified and streamlined whenever possible. Good procedures minimize unnecessary steps, limit excessive detail, and focus on what truly matters. Most importantly, procedures should contribute to performance, not hinder it. The goal is to guide effective action, not create bureaucracy or slow decision-making. When designed well, procedural manuals provide structure without rigidity and support both operational control and continuous improvement. Legal contracts form the foundation of formal buyer-supplier relationships and help protect both parties by clearly defining rights, responsibilities, and expectations. A standard purchase contract includes basic structural features such as identification of the parties, scope of work or goods, pricing, delivery terms, and payment conditions. These elements establish the core of the agreement. Contracts also contain boilerplate terms, which may seem routine but are critically important. These clauses address issues such as dispute resolution, governing law, termination, force majeure, and liability, and they help manage risk if problems arise. Understanding basic contract principles is essential. These principles include offer and acceptance, consideration, legal capacity, and mutual intent, all of which must be present for a contract to be enforceable. Purchasing professionals are also involved in the execution and administration of agreements. This includes ensuring contracts are properly authorized, signed, communicated, and managed throughout their life cycle. Every enforceable agreement must contain essential elements of a contract, including clear obligations, lawful purpose, and defined remedies for non-performance. Once a contract is in place, purchasing must ensure compliance with contract terms and assess supplier performance. This helps verify that suppliers meet delivery, quality, cost, and service commitments. In many organizations, especially in public or regulated environments, purchasing must follow formal competitive contracting procedures, such as requests for proposals or bids, to ensure fairness and transparency. Contracts are created through a structured contract development process, typically involving legal review, stakeholder input, negotiation, and approval. Purchasing professionals often rely on sample agreements and templates to ensure consistency and reduce legal risk, while still adapting terms to specific situations. Finally, contracts use formal legal definitions and standardized clauses to avoid ambiguity and ensure that terms are interpreted consistently. Together, these components ensure that purchasing contracts are clear, enforceable, and aligned with organizational objectives. As we wrap up this lecture, I want to take a few minutes to deliberately revisit each of our learning objectives and make sure we clearly answer them. This recap is designed not just as a summary, but as a way to help you consolidate what you've learned and see how the pieces fit together. First, we set out to understand why purchasing policies are important. Purchasing policies matter because they provide guidance in situations where decisions are complex, ambiguous, or involve trade-offs. They define expectations for behavior, authority, and decision-making across the organization. Without clear policies, purchasing decisions become inconsistent, overly dependent on individual judgment, and vulnerable to ethical or legal risk. Policies also serve as a communication mechanism from top management. They translate executive intent and organizational values into actionable guidance for purchasing professionals. In that sense, policies are not just administrative documents, they are governance tools. Importantly, purchasing policies protect both the organization and its employees. They clarify who has authority to buy, under what conditions, and within what limits. They reduce the likelihood of maverick spending, conflicts of interest, and unethical behavior. Finally, purchasing policies are critical as supply chains become more global and more visible. Issues such as sustainability, labor practices, and supplier ethics are now matters of public scrutiny. Well-designed purchasing policies help organizations respond consistently and credibly to these pressures. The second learning objective focused on understanding the different types of purchasing policies. We saw that purchasing policies are not a single document, but a collection of policy areas that together shape how purchasing operates. Some policies define the role of purchasing within the organization, clarifying its responsibilities, authority, and relationship with other functional areas. Other policies define the conduct of purchasing personnel. These include ethics policies, reciprocity policies, rules governing supplier contact, restrictions involving former employees, and mechanisms for reporting irregular business dealings. These policies exist to preserve integrity, fairness, and trust in supplier relationships. We also examined policies related to social responsibility, including support for minority and disadvantaged suppliers, corporate social responsibility initiatives, environmental policies, and labor and human rights standards. These policies reflect the expanding role of purchasing as a steward of organizational values throughout the supply chain. Finally, we discussed policies governing buyer-supplier relationships, supplier qualification and selection, contract award processes, and how organizations respond to supplier disruptions or risk. Together, these policy types ensure that purchasing decisions align with strategic objectives, legal requirements, and stakeholder expectations. The third learning objective was to understand the different types of purchasing procedures and how they differ from policies. Purchasing procedures are detailed operating instructions that translate policy into action. While policies answer the question of what should guide decisions, procedures answer the question of how tasks are performed. We discussed procedure manuals, which act as reference guides and training tools, especially for new employees. These manuals promote consistency, efficiency, and compliance by documenting required steps and activities. We also looked at purchasing forms, legal contract development procedures, and operational procedures covering areas such as supplier qualification, cost analysis, electronic purchasing systems, handling non-conforming materials, and managing buyer-owned tooling. A key takeaway is that procedures should support performance, not hinder it. They must be periodically reviewed, simplified where possible, and flexible enough to accommodate different situations. Good procedures standardize what should be standardized while still allowing professional judgment where it is needed. Taken together, purchasing policies and procedures form the foundation of effective purchasing management. Policies establish values, expectations, and boundaries. Procedures operationalize those policies in daily practice. When aligned properly, they help organizations purchase responsibly, ethically, and strategically, even in complex and uncertain environments. As you move forward in this course, keep in mind that strong purchasing performance is not just about negotiating price. It is about governance, consistency, accountability, and long-term relationships, all of which are shaped by sound policies and well-designed procedures.